Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. So we'll be starting in about 1 or 2 minutes. Please write in the chat if you can hear me and see me well, okay? This webinar is going to be in English, and it will take about 45 minutes, maximum 1 hour. Morning, good morning, hello. So yeah, you can hear me? Good. Thanks for being here today. A few words about myself. So my name is Ekaterina Redькina. Currently, I'm an English teacher at Moscow State University at the Faculty of Psychology, but also I'm a teacher trainer and presenter at Cambridge Assessment English. And today I will be talking about a new format of B1 Preliminary for Schools exam. Right, so you can write your questions if you have any, but I guess we will look at them at the end of the presentations, okay? So if I don't answer your questions, you can ask them, so save them for later, and if I don't ask them in the middle, you can ask them at the end, if I don't answer, right? Oh, I see some people from yesterday. That's great. Thank you for coming again. So let's start. We don't have much time, but we will have an overview of preliminary exam, and I will start with talking about changes, why exams change format in the first place. Then I will guide you through the changes, so you know actually what is different now from the previous version. If you're new to preliminary exam, if you've never prepared for it, it's still fine. You will get the idea of what exam is. I will not show each and every part because, again, because of the time, and here the idea is to show you the changes. So I will summarize the changes, and I will give you a few ideas on how to prepare, what exercises and activities to give, and then your questions are very much welcome. So let's start with the first part, why change the exams. Exams do not change very often. They change about every 10-ish years. And if you remember, in 2015, there were changes for FCE for schools. Now, starting from January 2020, 2 exams, key, which is A2 level, and B1 preliminary exam for schools were changed. So now there is a new format. Unfortunately, yes, you need to buy new books and you need to, get new materials. So basic reason or reasons for changing the exams is that they want them to be relevant to current needs of learners and teachers and schools. And of course, approaches to teaching evolve in a way. They don't change completely, but they somehow, evolve. And when we change exams, we sort of address this. Also, Cambridge collects feedback from, different participants of the whole teaching and learning process. And we talk about teachers here, learners, exam centers. They all give information about, feedback about the exams, and the exams are changed as the result. So, but for me, the most important thing for changes is that exams become better connected between each other. So there is better alignment. And now, if we talk about preliminary exam, it is much more similar to key, and in a way similar to FCE, which means that if your students are doing CAT or key first, they're kind of better prepared for preliminary. And exam format is more similar, tasks are more similar, so there is better alignment. Okay, so from my experience, if you don't have sound, maybe people need to, upload the page again. Good morning, everyone. So the biggest changes in preliminary, the biggest and the most significant, I would say, concern the writing paper. So in the past, reading and writing used to be in one paper, and it means that it had one score. Now, reading and writing are 2 separate papers, and writing is assessed separately. What does it mean for us and for the learners? It means that writing will, students have an ability to show their best skills in writing, and if they're not so good at reading goes separately now. So basically these skills now are assessed separately, and they can show their best. On the downside of that, it is that students cannot compensate for one skill through another. If they're not so good at writing, they could have compensated before through reading. Now they cannot, so they need to show two separate skills. Well, that's the biggest thing, and I will show you how actually writing has changed. So we're looking at this CEFR scale, or CEFR scale, right, which now looks this way. If you remember, in the previous one, it used to be very colorful with green and red and yellow and everything. Now it's quite, simple, stylish, I would say. So the purple column here shows all the exams for schools, starting from pre-A1 starters up to C2 proficiency. So for schools, exams refer to school children, and the content is adapted for school children. The red column here, it's general and higher education. It means that the same exams starting from A2 level can be taken by all the students, let's say adults or university students, and the content is adapted for them better. The blue column is business. So we're here talking today about B1 preliminary, which is in the middle, B1 for schools, so purple column, only for schools, right? Because we're talking about teaching at school now. So what are the changes? Well, first of all, if you want to know the format and all the details, you absolutely for sure need to download the handbook. Handbook now also looks differently. It used to be colorful with some, picture and red color on the bottom. Now it is like this, and where you can download it. You can download it from cambridgeenglish.org, which is a hub, right? The central site where you can get everything. So PDF for handbook can be downloaded for free there. This manual, if you've never used it, gives you absolutely all the information about the exam and everything you need to know. This is like the Bible of the teacher who prepares for the exam. So you start always with the handbook, and then you go to course books and all other supplementary materials. Again, for free to download from cambridgeenglish.org. So the changes. I will show each part separately and we'll say a few words about it. So we'll start with reading. The red boxes here actually are new parts, okay? If you look carefully at other parts, you will see that there are also a few changes. So for example, part 1, part 2 are fine. They are the same as they used to be. Part 3 now is what used to be part 4. Again, does it matter for your students? Well, not really, because, well, they do the exam the way it is now. For you, as teachers, when parts change order, again, maybe it's not the big problem. However, new part 4 and new part 6, that's what we should pay attention to. So let's look at them. Part 4 now is like this. It's, again, not an absolutely new type of exercise, because I'm absolutely sure you've seen this before, and your students have seen this before in their course books. Even if they're not doing any exams, this is quite a typical exercise to do. So there is a text with gaps, right? And there are 5 gaps in the text, and there are several phrases. And of course, there are more phrases because there are distractors here. There are 8 phrases, 5 of them should go inside the text. So it's a classical gapped text, gapped exercise. What's the focus? It focuses on gist understanding, gist reading, which means the general idea of the text, right? Then it is, the focus is coherence and cohesion, so how text is connected inside. So one of the most typical mistakes here is that students do not read the whole text and they don't get the main idea. So they lose the connection between paragraphs. They don't know how paragraphs are connected. They don't know whether there is an argument inside, or so they kind of lose it. They start reading, that's what I call reading the gaps. They read something like text around the gap only, which is not a good idea and it's not a good strategy. So Obviously, you need to teach your students to read the whole text first, then put phrases inside, and then check and make sure that the whole text goes nicely, as a whole piece. To initiate gist reading at the beginning, what you can do when you teach, you may first give the text without the sentences and ask the students to look it through, maybe give them even a time limit so they read it quickly, and ask them a few gist questions. What was the text about? What was the message or something? So make sure they read the text, then let them put the sentences inside and help them to look at connecting words, linking words, transition words and references in the text. So it's not only about content, it's also about structure very much. Okay, so not an absolutely new exercise. Again, you've seen it before, but now it's a new part 4 in exam. Another part which is new, it's part 6. This is so-called open-close. Open-close type of exercise, it's when you fill in the gap. However, there are no variants to choose from. So that's not my favorite, if you ask me, and my students are not big fans of this exercise because it's usually, they get confused where the words come from and they don't know what to put. So what's the focus? Here the focus is on detailed understanding of the word and, of course, sentence level. And again, reading the gap only or a few words around the gap is not the best strategy, right? They need to understand what's going on, and they need to be very careful on the lexical level and on grammatical level. They need to understand how this word fits into the sentence. There are 6 gaps, and the good thing here is that we do not put content words, okay? So we put words that are more structural. We don't put adjectives here. We don't put nouns here or verbs. So basically, these are conjunctions, prepositions, articles, and so on. And this exercise checks the knowledge of, sentence structure and grammar. And well, let's look at the next slide. And there are a few words. And could you please write in the chat which word or words are not likely to be in the open-close exercise that you saw on the previous slide. So which word is unlikely to be the answer in the open-close exercise? So you can write it in the chat. Extremely, yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Thank you very much. Because it's a content word, it's not a structural word, right? So that's what you should teach your students, that guys, you're not looking for content words because they will be thinking, what noun should I put, a verb? No, you don't need to do that. You put structural words. It actually makes their life much easier. Good thing is that you can create these exercises yourself. It's not so difficult. You can take any text, maybe of the lower level, if you feel that your students are struggling with that, and, sort of hide words, eliminate words from it, give them the text and let them fill it in, reconstruct. And you can focus yourself only on prepositions, only on articles, only on conjunctions, and so on. So make it yourself and then turn to exam version. So if we talk about reading, so 2 new parts, the rest is the same, the order is changed a little bit. As for reading tips in general, what would I recommend? Well, first of all, it's a very good idea to teach your students to read not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom as well, which means that maybe you need to collaborate with parents and initiate more reading, encourage more reading, And again, it's not your job completely, but it would be nice if students read something for pleasure, extensive reading, when they read not only Instagram posts. And even if they read Instagram, let them read it in English. So increase exposure as much as possible. In class, you might have this book crossing section. That's what we have in my school, where I teach teenagers as well. So what we do, we have a shelf where you can put your books and take books of other people who bring them there. And this is classical book crossing. And of course, books should be in English. You can bring something, they can take it, so they exchange books. They can have it forever if you don't need them anymore, or they can read them and bring them back. Then it's like a bookshelf. We also have a bookshelf. I put my books there that I want my students to read. I bought them specifically for my students. So people who want to read, they take a book, take it home, read it, bring it back. I don't check the reading here, okay? I don't ask like, did you read it? I might ask, did you like it? But I do not check. That's not for homework. It's just extra reading, always good. Very important thing, provide different genres. I will show you in a minute that writing has changed a lot, and there are different genres of writing in a preliminary exam. So it's crucial to show students that, well, different genres exist, and if they've never seen a letter or an article or something else, they have difficulty writing it later. So make them read different styles, genres, and different types of texts. It's a very good idea to bring authentic material to class. If you're doing menu, bring a menu from the, I don't know, last trip that you had. Collect things and bring authentic material. So print them out. Now it's so easy. You can use the book, right, the course book, but still sort of supplement it with authentic texts. Reading chart, it works nicely for teenagers and for younger learners. It's like a big table where you can put stars or some other stickers or something. When students read, you encourage them and you see the best reader of the month or something. And of course, choose materials that are age appropriate and that students like, okay, because otherwise they will not read anything. So classical reading lesson is just a quick reminder, can look like this. So we start with some prediction of the topic. You can show pictures here, right? Don't forget to teach blocking, pre-teach blocking vocabulary. So it's vocabulary that it might be difficult for your students. For exam tasks as well, when you teach them, help them with some vocabulary before reading. At the exam, no one is going to help them, but when you teach them during the year, it's a, well, good thing to do. Then probably reading for gist, reading for detail or details. Then maybe work on inferring meaning of some vocabulary, right? And then if you want to do some follow-up, speaking or writing. That's the classical, like very typical reading lesson, which of course you can play with. So let's talk about writing now. Writing, as you see, the red color, again, shows that there are some changes. So what has happened? If you remember, writing, well, in the previous part, used to have three, writing paper used to have three parts. Now there are two, and the first here is, again, writing an email as it used to be. However, it has become much longer, 2 times longer, I should say, even more. So the email used to be 35, 45 words. Now it's 100. 100 is quite, you know, long text. So that's email, task number 1. And task number 2 is writing an article or a story, okay? So there is a choice now. And new thing here, of course, obviously, is an article. Story is quite familiar. And story, they write stories, you know, from A2 level, even from flyers. They describe pictures, write a story. It's not new. Article, before that, article used to be only in FC, starting from B2. Now, article starts from B1, which is interesting and tricky at the same time. So, this is a new format of the email, and that's how it looks. I will have it on a bigger slide, next one. So just look at it. Even layout is different, right? So even the way they present the task is different. So what you need to do here, you need to explain your students that this is how the task looks like. The task doesn't tell you, like with bullet points, answer this question, answer that question, tell about this and that. No, now the task shows you with these lines and small words around the text what exactly the student should do. So if there is a phrase and it says great here, so it means that you should express how great this idea is. If there is explain, word, then you need to explain something, maybe answer the question like this one. If you suggest, then you suggest. So basically, this is the task. Make sure you guide your learners through this. So what they expect here? Of course, any writing at B1 level should show grammar and lexis as well, as much as possible. So they need to show a range of tenses, different vocabulary expressions. Minor mistakes are still fine unless they impede understanding. It's very good if your students are ambitious in the use of language, and please do encourage them to try out something. If they use language that is even of higher level, everyone is happy about that, okay? So they should take risks. In Cambridge exams, it's good and it's encouraged. So errors that do not impede understanding are not penalized, minor errors, okay? So I'll remind you about the assessment criteria quickly. Assessment criteria have not changed, which is good. So if you're familiar with them, you're safe. So this is the assessment scale. The assessment scale is used for all writing parts, but I'm showing it now. So there are 4 criteria, 1, 2, 3, 4. Could you please try to, maybe you know, maybe you don't, then you try to guess, what are the criteria for assessing writing? For example, number 1 is, I don't know, what do you think? So if you could write it in the chat, I'll show you the answers on the next slide, okay? So the first one is about, actually, the main one, what the students are writing about. So if they're writing about a party, or they're writing about, I don't know, their shopping experience or something else, and whether they have done what they were asked to do. So this is number 1. Number 2 is more like how appropriate it is. And if email looks like an email, if the article looks like an article, and so on. Number 3 would be how the text is organized. And number 4, grammar, vocabulary, how accurate it is. Okay. Right, so I will help you then here. These 4 criteria, all of them are used for assessing writing, starting from B1 up to higher levels. And each of these criteria uses marks from 0 to 5. So altogether, maximum would be 20 points, okay? So this is how criteria look like. So the first one would be content, what the text is about, if we make it very simple, right? Number 2 is communicative achievement. Number 3, organization. And number 4, language. Language is probably your favorite, and it's the easiest to assess. So what I wanted to mention here, which I think is very important, is, this is the example again of the task, that when you assess the writing, please make sure you assess these criteria separately, okay? Very often what it happens, we start looking at the language, at grammar, and at vocabulary. So, and we're not satisfied with the language. We think it's quite poor. And somehow, you know, mentally, psychologically, it influences the whole impression. And we think that, well, maybe I don't like the content as well. What I wanted to show you here, that it's absolutely possible that the content is relevant and good, and it's 5, so it's maximum score. Whereas the rest could be not, you know, so good. So please do not let the impression of language or maybe organization influence the whole impression. So content, it's really about content. It doesn't mean the whole impression of the reading, okay? So my recommendation here, well, read the text maybe several times. Yes, it's time consuming, but at the beginning, if you're new to this criteria, maybe you read first thinking, okay, what is the content here? You read it. Okay, what is the communicative achievement? You look through it again and try to separate, okay? Also, this rubric, as you see here, it is in a handbook. So everything you need to know about assessment is also in the handbook, okay? But assessment hasn't changed. So second part of writing has two elements, either an article or a story, and students choose. So again, we'll have students who enjoy writing stories more, we'll have students who like articles more. Of course, they need to be able to write both, obviously. This is how an article might look like. So have a look. For me, it's quite tricky. So the title here, what makes you laugh? So write an article telling us what you find funny and who you enjoy laughing with. Do you think it's good to laugh a lot? Why? So it's not an easy thing to write on the spot. And one of the tricky things here is that you need to know the format of what an article is. If, again, your students have never seen an article, or I mean in English, or they have never read an article in English, how are they going to write it? Just think yourself now, would you be able to write an article straight away, right now, on this topic? Well, it could be tricky, right? So make sure you discuss with your students what actually makes an article, okay? As for the story, again, this is a familiar task. Students have written stories before, and the story here is not the picture description as it used to be in the previous levels. Here, the story starts with the first sentence. For example, Joe looked at the map and decided to go left. They need to use the first sentence and continue writing the story. If you feel that your learners are not very good at imagining stuff and they are not very, happy to write a story, that they don't have any ideas, well, you can give them a picture, because in the previous levels they have pictures. Here, what you can do, you can first give them a picture and ask them to brainstorm about, this picture. So who is this guy? Where is he going? Is he lost? Or is he in Europe? Or where does he come from? What's his life story? Is he married? I don't know, anything you can think of. So, and when they finish discussing, they can do it in pairs, individually, they can do it with your help. Then you actually give them the story to write. So give them picture first. Don't tell them even they're going to write it. Let them brainstorm. Something happened. You can see me back? Okay. I'm sorry. Прошу прощения, здесь, видимо, сеть перегружена. Okay, I'll go back a little bit. So, thinking what makes an article, letter, story, a story. The answer, what makes them, what they are. Conventions, okay? Conventions, it means certain rules that exist in English language for each genre. So give them different texts, analyze this text with them, see that, well, the structure is different, language is different, something is more emotional, length maybe is different, and so on. So analyze text and then write with them, help them write, okay? So that would be your starting point. And of course, start from reading. The more they read this text, the better they understand them, and it's easier for them to write, okay? Well, an exercise that I would like to share, I like it very much. I'm sure you know that your students very often use the same words, again and again. Everything is nice, everything is beautiful or interesting, good and bad, right? The amount of words they use is not very big. However, B1 level already provides us with a certain range of vocabulary. Grammar as well, but this is about vocabulary. So what you can do, you can create a text or find a text somewhere and change all the adjectives into one word, let's say nice. So we have a nice restaurant here, and food was nice, and time was nice, and everything was nice. What you ask your students to do? Well, change this and find synonyms. So restaurant could be modern, and food could be delicious, right? And the music could be fantastic, and so on and so forth. Also, you can ask your students to do the opposite, and instead of something positive, think of a negative situation. Let's imagine it was the worst day of your life, and it was a horrible restaurant with, you know, shabby decorations and very old-fashioned music, and food was bland and not tasty, and so on. The language you expect should depend on the level. So here we're talking about B1. So think about the list of words that your learners should know, okay? That's a good exercise. It could be as long as you want. And it could be about adjectives here. It could be about maybe adverbs, if you like, so to help them develop their vocabulary. Also, to sort of wrap it up and finish with writing, what is a good thing, and I use it with my students, it's called collaborative writing. Collaborative writing is actually when students write something together. We often think that writing should be done individually because at the exam they write on their own. That's true. However, when we teach, why not to put them into pairs or small groups, though I prefer pairs, and ask them to create a story together. And interestingly enough, the result can be even better than individual one. Usually collaborative texts are shorter, but they are better in terms of grammar and vocabulary because people control each other. It's peer correction. And what you can do, you can ask them to plan it and write together in class, and then they do individual writing at home, okay? You can even check collaborative writings, give feedback, and they can brainstorm together. So it's a very nice thing to do. If you've never tried it, please do, please do. And the good thing, you don't need to check, let's say, 30 writings, you need to check 15, which is always good. Okay, so now this is an app, not exactly app, sorry, that's a site online, writeandimprove.com. And Write and Improve is a beautiful resource that you can use as teachers, and you can give it to your learners. So this is where your learners can put their texts and they can check them for grammar and vocabulary. So this is basically a resource that helps you to correct the mistakes, but it doesn't correct them automatically. It tells you, well, maybe there is something wrong here, maybe you meant something else. Write and Improve works at different levels. So even if your learners are very weak, it will help them. And if they are very strong, now it also helps stronger learners. The results can be saved there. You can see the profile of the whole class. You can see the dynamic, and it's nice. It's nice. Well, Write and Improve, okay? So a few words about listening. Listening hasn't changed very much. And as you see, there is only one new part, one new task, which is number 2. They will listen to 6 short texts, but the tricky thing here, it's about attitudes and opinions. So what is attitude and opinion? This is more about emotional side of the question. It's not about facts. You see, I've colored some words here. So what did the boy like best about it? The girl thinks, how did he feel? So feeling, liking, thinking, it's more about the attitude and emotions. It's not factual information that we normally have. And could be tricky because sometimes the answer lies, in the adverbs. And there are also distractors. As you see, there are 3 options, 3 answers here. So this is the new part, not exactly new as the format, because multiple choice is a familiar thing. It's just maybe a little bit new in terms of the content here. And we have similar things in FCE, and that's how preliminary and FCE become similar again. So this is listening. That's it. The rest is the same as it used to be, okay? Another resource I would recommend for B1, it's actually for B1, B2 students. This is a site called Virtually Anywhere. So if you Google it, just in Google, put Virtually Anywhere, because the link is tricky, I didn't want to put link here. you will find it immediately. It's from cambridgeenglish.org, virtually anywhere. It is a site that gives you several episodes for listening. And these episodes even have, well, some material for teachers. They have lesson plans now. So if you want to teach some listening and you don't have enough time to plan your lesson on virtually anywhere, there is a section where you can download PDFs of lesson plans. And then you can use this as a listening exercise, listening activity. So very helpful for the students and for the teacher as well, okay? So now let's talk about speaking. Speaking is a separate part, you know it, right? It's a separate paper and it's assessed separately, and usually students come on a separate day. So they have reading, writing, listening on one day, speaking on another day. There are 4 people at the exam. So we have 2 examiners and 2 candidates. Sometimes there could be 3 candidates, but it's a rare situation, and it happens when there are maybe not enough registrations or someone is ill or something. But normally, pair of students. One examiner is called interlocutor, obviously, because he's talking, he or she. They're talking to the students, and assessor is the person who actually assesses. Why it is important? Because if you create and have mock exam at your school, you want to have like something similar, you need to ask someone to be the second examiner, okay? So you need to imitate the situation as much as possible. So as for assessment here, assessment at B1 is based on 4 criteria. So we look at grammar and vocabulary, and again, I'm sure you focus on that a lot, but that's not everything. We look at pronunciation as well, which is an important thing, and we all know typical Russian mistakes with pronunciation. We look at interactive communication. So this is more about how students talk to each other. It's not monologue, it's a dialogue, right? Are they polite? Can they interrupt each other? Do they help each other and sort of initiate talk? What about you? What do you think? As for me, all this. And discourse management, it's both in dialogue and monologue. It's how well they control their own speech. Is it smooth? Does it go as a flow? Are there many pauses? Do they have any self-correction? That's all in discourse management. If you go to handbook, you will see everything there, okay? So it describes in detail everything. So assessment scale is the scale that is used by the assessor, and that's why it's called assessment scale. It's the person who is not talking to the candidates, who's sitting. So, and if we talk about the interlocutor is the person who communicates with students. This person also gives certain mark, but it's called global achievement, right? So this is something that is about general achievement, general performance of students. And it's from scale 1 to 5, then we double it, but that's for calculation. I don't think we need it now. So 2 marks, and then the joint mark to assess the full performance of the students. So there are 4 parts in speaking. As for changes, part 2 and 3 now are in different order. So part 3 now, the recent part 3 used to be part 2, and the opposite, okay? The parts themselves haven't changed. So the idea is the same, just the order. So in the first part, the interlocutor is talking individually to each candidate. It's like, hi, how are you? What's your name? Where do you come from? What's your favorite subject? And so on. Second part, it's description of the photographs. Again, it used to be part 3. So one person is talking for 1 minute, another person is listening and giving a comment, and then they change roles. Part 3, they describe, they talk about the situation and pictures. So again, it used to be the same way, but in part 2. Part 4 is discussion of likes, dislikes, experience, habits. It's a simple overall talk between 2 students. So this is what they do with the pictures. right? Description of pictures in part 2, talking about place, people, activities, colors, and everything. Very familiar task, especially because we have we had it before, right? And part 3, this is where they use pictures, and the central picture illustrates the situation. So this one is about class going on excursion to another city, and the students need to discuss which option of, spending time they would prefer. Would they like to go to the zoo, or to the skating ring, or hop on, hop off bus around the town, and so on. So they discuss this. That's where they look at interactive communication patterns. And part 4 would be talking about their likes and dislikes connected to the previous part. So you see, not very new logic here, just with a little bit different order. The rest is basically the same, okay? So this is the main site where you have all the updates about key and preliminary, both for schools and not for schools. So you can go straight to this site, which is keyandpreliminary.cambridgeenglish.org, or you can go to the main site, cambridgeenglish.org, the usual one. And when you start looking for key and preliminary, you will be redirected to this site. And this one, it's a big platform now, and it gives you the description of changes. It gives you some free materials. It gives you handbooks. It gives you videos as well with the speaking part. Please watch them so you know what is expected. And these are new videos because the format has changed. So the videos can also be found on YouTube channel. You know that Cambridge Assessment English has its own YouTube channel, Cambridge English TV, okay? And on this Cambridge English TV, you can find videos on speaking parts of all the exams. And under the video, there is, you see my arrow here, there is a link. If you follow this link, you will get a PDF file with the description and the assessment of this speaking part. So you can get the idea what was good, what was not. And very often they actually have the final mark here as well, so you can compare your vision of this speaking part with real examiners' assessment. Also, it's a good idea to watch the speaking exams with your students, and they can assess with you, and they can tell what they liked, what they didn't like, and it helps to lower anxiety and for them to understand that speaking is not so scary, right? Well, as for word list, I just wanted to mention that there is a word list, right? I'm sure you know about it. There is a PDF with vocabulary word list for B1 for preliminary. Again, you can download it at cambridgeenglish.org, or you can simply Google it and write vocabulary list B1. The list is almost the same as it used to be. There are a few new words that are connected with technology, like app, podcast, selfie, but I'm sure your learners already know these words even before all other words. So it's not a big difficulty here. And as for exam support, obviously there are lots of things you can find again online. Handbook, starting point. You have sample tests online with audio tracks and with keys, which is important, of course. Speaking test videos with examiner comments, that's what I've mentioned. Word lists, lesson plans to help you teach. Some tips from Cambridge English TV. Again, there are webinars there that you can watch. Some assessment scales for writing and speaking. Everything online, everything for free, downloadable at one click. So cambridgeenglish.org, that's your starting point. And another resource, especially important now when we all turn online, it's called Digital Teacher. It's a huge resource with lots of useful information. So if you look down here, you will see that, first of all, you can evaluate your needs. You can understand that, am I good enough as a digital teacher? Do I know a lot or not? So you can evaluate your needs and understand what you need. Then training. This section has a lot of things to offer to new teachers to develop their digital skills. And this section, the last one, product review, it has about, I don't know, 15 different products, apps and sites that you can use for different ages. It gives you information about Zoom, about Quizlet, about Padlet, and different other sites. So maybe it's a good idea to check them out now, because we are all turning online for the nearest months, I guess. So you might find something interesting there. As for preparation materials, the books, well, you should be familiar with them. Compact, Complete, Prepare. New book that is coming out, or even I think it has come out already, it's Open World, starting from A2 level. So all the books are sort of edited, changed for the new format. So make sure you have recent edition, okay, for the new format. And I don't know which ones you like. I actually like a lot Complete, and I use Trainer. Prepare is not exactly my favorite, but I used it also. It's good, but just, yeah, not my favorite. Open World, haven't used it yet, but I think I will at some point. And this is it, actually. This is it with the main changes. So I will sum it up quickly. So writing now is a separate paper, okay? And writing has changed with longer letter and article together with the story, like you change either article or story. Listening has a new part. Speaking hasn't changed. Reading has two new parts, gap fill and open close. Okay, so that's it. Not much, but quite important changes. So this is me, my contacts, if you want to stay in touch. My email, my Instagram, my site. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. So you can write them here, okay? Thank you too. Thank you very much. That's good that you're participating today, that you found time to be here. Don't forget that there were changes in Key as well, but we already had this webinar before. So recent changes, Key and preliminary. Thank you too. Okay. Good. So if there are no questions, I will be goodbying then. Thank you. Well, if you're teaching today, good luck with your lessons. And yeah, I have my classes soon too, so I'll get ready for that. Okay, let's wait a couple more minutes. Maybe some questions appear. Don't forget to download the handbook, which will help you with everything you need to know about the exams, okay? It will navigate you. Yeah, see you next time. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.